Hello, my name is Evelyn, and today I'd like to share a chapter of my life. Every time I think about it, a heavy sensation falls over me, in my heart, and I can't help but blame myself. It's a story I wish I could erase, but life doesn't always give us that option. It all began years ago when I was 18, living with my family in Italy, a city as beautiful as it is mysterious. At the time, I thought I had everything. My family was well off, and both my parents were thriving in their careers. My father was a successful businessman, and my mother was an accomplished interior designer, despite their busy schedules. They were older than me, and I would describe them as such. They made sure I had all I could possibly need. Whether it was financial items or emotion, the love my parents offered me, as wonderful as it was never quite the same as the love I experienced from Adrienne and Sebastian. Their link with me was something unique. Before we go any farther in this narrative, don't forget to subscribe to my channel to hear more amazing real tales. Make sure to watch till the end and show your support by clicking the like button. Trust me, you won't want to miss this story. They were more than just brothers. They were always my protectors. Looking out for me in the way they loved me felt more meaningful than my parents' love because they constantly demonstrated it through action. My parents loved me by providing me with a comfortable existence, but Adrienne and Sebastian went above and beyond. When I was sad, they noticed even if I didn't say anything. When I was younger, I could always confide in them without fear of judgment, regardless of whether I fell or faced bullying. When classmates mocked me for the dress I was wearing at school, Adrienne and Sebastian were the first to step in and defend me when I came home crying. They didn't just console me, they went to the school to confront those kids. They didn't use violence, but their sharp words and cold demeanor ensured pay. They were like heroes, always ready to help whenever I needed it. I remember the evenings when our entire family would gather, but I always wanted to sit between Adrienne and Sebastian. They'd wrap their arms around me, sometimes even playfully arguing over who would sit next to me. They always joked about me being their little princess and swore it was their lifelong duty to protect me. Over time, I realized that their love for me was unlike anyone else's. They were also the first to help me overcome my teenage body image issues. Sebastian would spend evenings teaching me how to apply light makeup and reassuring me that I was beautiful just the way I was. Adrienne, who always called me the cutest little sister in the world, helped me pick out clothes I felt valued, and their love was special, not just mine. Brothers with my parents at work. Adrienne and Sebastian was my emotional rock and drove me to school. They helped me with my homework and assured me that I never felt lonely late at night if I couldn't sleep. I would knock on their door and knock. They would always greet me with a warm smile. Sometimes they would tell me amusing stories or simply sit by me until I fell asleep. It was those small things that made me believe in their love for me was far greater than anything I ever received from my parents. But that love, which I thought was pure and innocent, would eventually lead to unhealthy. I'll share the rest when I muster the courage to confront that aspect of my memory. I recall it vividly because, as the youngest member of the family, I frequently engaged in silly behavior. Without fear of reprimanding, I would occasionally jump in and hug them, or casually sit on their laps if they were sitting somewhere. Adrienne and Sebastian were not just my brother, they were my closest friends. People I never felt shy around, even when showing affection. One afternoon, a warm summer day, I walked out of my bedroom. The sunlight streamed through the large living room window, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Adrienne and Sebastian were sitting on the sofa, focused on the TV. I had no idea what they were viewing, however, they appeared to be completely immersed in it. Without thinking, I came closer, wiping my eyes. They didn't see me, so I mischievously inquired, "What are you doing now?" I chuckled and said nothing, and settled comfortably on their laps, resting my head on Adrienne's shoulder. "What are you two watching so intently?" I inquired, but did not receive an immediate response. When I glanced at the screen, I realized it was a romantic film, and just as the film was reaching its emotional climax, the two characters on screen were hugging and kissing passionately. Seeing me staring at the screen, Adrienne and Sebastian became awkward. I smiled shyly and quickly said, "Evelyn, this isn't a kid's film." I erupted into laughter. "I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm trying to escape his hold." 18, I teased, though secretly I found the scene quite interesting. I continued trying to peek through Sebastian's fingers, laughing and teasing them at the same time. At that moment, whether intentional or not, my hand brushed something inside Sebastian's pocket and the hard, warm feeling startled me. My heart raced, so I quickly pulled my hand back. I didn't dare to look at Adrienne or Sebastian. "I'm sorry," I stammered. Then I quickly stood up and ran into my room. I slammed the door behind me, my heart pounding. I sat on my bed, wondering what had just happened. The image of the remote control in Sebastian's pocket kept replaying in my mind, making my face flush. Was I overthinking it, or was it an accident? I didn't know, but the shame and embarrassment lingered, and I couldn't bring myself to leave my room. The thought of what Adrienne and Sebastian might think of me kept me in my room, unable to leave. I was getting hungry, and I knew my family was probably waiting for me to join them for dinner. But the events of the afternoon lingered in my mind, and I felt a little embarrassed. I kept wondering if Adrienne and Sebastian were thinking about what had happened. But then I reassured myself that maybe it wasn't as serious as I thought, and perhaps they had already forgotten about it. So I opened the door. I tiptoed down the hallway, hoping not to meet their gaze. As I entered the living room, I paused to listen for any sounds. I tiptoed into the living room, scared of catching their attention, but to my amazement, no one was there. How unusual, I thought, as I stood in front of the sofa where I had been with them earlier that afternoon. I was still trying to figure out which station was on the TV when two faces bent down and looked in the same direction as me. "What are you doing, Evelyn?" Sebastian's voice rang out right next to my ear, making me jump. Adrienne laughed loudly from the other side, adding, "You look like a thief." I let out a small scream from shock, turning around to see them standing right behind me, their sudden appearance nearly stopping my heart, and we all jumped out at the same time. Sebastian and Adrienne glanced at me and erupted into laughter, leaving me unable to contain my amusement and fear. "Oh my God, you frightened me beyond comprehension. You seem awake." Adrienne lifted his brow, smiling mischievously, and Sebastian rubbed my head teasingly. "You aren't going to eat anything, are you?" I laughed along with them at that point. The awkward tension from the afternoon had subsided. I reassured myself, reasoning that what I had touched earlier must not have been what I had imagined, or the two of them would not be laughing like this. With that thought, I felt a sense of relief and tried to act as if nothing had happened. I was simply looking to see if anyone was here, and I smiled brightly, attempting to alter the subject. "What are you two doing behind me, Sebastian?" Shrugged. "Are you attempting to scare me?" Adrienne added, "I was just trying to scare you a little, but I didn't expect your reaction to be so startling." His voice was light-hearted, and who would have thought you'd jump up like that? "Your expression was truly precious," and the atmosphere became lighter and more cheerful as we all burst into laughter. At this point, Adrienne placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Okay, let's go eat. The whole family is waiting for you." I nodded, smiled, and followed them. When I entered the kitchen, the family had already gathered around the dining table. My parents smiled softly as they saw me, and I sat down, feeling the warmth of the kitchen and the peaceful, cozy environment during dinner. The conversation was full of laughter. My parents talked about work, and Adrienne and Sebastian occasionally teased me with light jokes. I joined in, and the feeling of embarrassment from earlier seemed to have vanished after dinner. Despite the fact that I was still humiliated by the afternoon's mocking, I smiled to myself, convincing myself that everything would be okay. Adrienne and Sebastian were still the greatest. With that, I fell asleep peacefully. However, the next morning was not entirely peaceful, with only a thin wall separating Adrienne's and Sebastian's rooms, allowing even the smallest sounds like movies or music to be audible. I was known for sleeping late, but that morning I awoke at 8 a.m. I thought I was still dreaming or that the sunlight through the curtains was blinding me, but after a few minutes of waking up, I realized there was a strange sound coming from the next room. My room was located between Adrienne's and Sebastian's rooms, and our house had thin walls, so even the slightest noise could travel easily. I was used to hearing them play games or talk, but this time the sound was different. At first I assumed they were watching an action movie, but then I didn't want to believe it. But the sound became clear. It wasn't music, and it wasn't just regular talking. Even though the walls blocked the sound, I could still hear rapid, sensual noises mixed with heavy breathing. I tried to ignore it, but the more I listened, the more certain I became that Adrienne and Sebastian were watching something. A rush of shame overcame me. Why am I awake? Why did I have to do this? Listen, my heart rate increased, and I felt as if I were burning. I put my hands over my face, attempting to stop the thoughts that were invading my mind. This is a private matter. I told myself that everyone has seen things like that, including myself, but hearing it coming from their room made me uncomfortable. We had always been close, and I never imagined myself in this situation, but the sound seemed to cling to me more and more. After rising from my bed, I was uncertain about my next steps, but I was unable to remain in my position for an extended period of time. I moved carefully down the hallway, trying not to make a sound, but as I got closer to Adrienne and Sebastian's door, the bell rang. The walls seemed to dissolve as they got so clear. I just stood there, hesitant. What should I do? My heart was pounding, and I felt embarrassed, confused, and uncertain. I had always known that these things happened, but hearing it from Adrienne and Sebastian's room was a completely different experience. I chewed on my lip, uncertain if I should return to my room or continue exploring my innermost thoughts. As I leaned against the door, seeking to calm myself, the sound intensified. Louder, drawing me in, the door swung open and I stepped backward. Sebastian surprised me by standing in front of me, his eyes wide with shock, as if he had become entangled in something he shouldn't have been doing. We stood there facing each other for what seemed like an eternity, the silence unbearable. Sebastian cleared his throat. "I'm attempting to break the tension. Evelyn, what exactly are you doing here?" he inquired. His voice was hurried, he avoided eye contact, his face was flushed, and I could tell he was just as uncomfortable as I was. I couldn't look at him because my heart was beating as I passed by. I attempted to talk. I stammered. It didn't sound convincing, but that was all I could think of. Just then, the sounds within the room abruptly ceased, and Adrienne stepped out. They both exchanged looks from behind Sebastian's anxious-looking crimson face, trying to find the correct explanation, but nobody said anything during the awkward silence. It was overpowering, and I attempted an awkward grin to disguise my humiliation. I was simply going by, and nothing was repeated. Leaving, I turned and walked away. Eager to get out of the situation, I returned to my room. I quickly closed the door and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. My heart was still racing, and a strange, embarrassing feeling washed over me. I couldn't stop replaying the awkward scene in my head. The image of Noah opening the door and Adrienne's expression when he stepped lingered in my mind. The atmosphere between the three of us was thick with tension, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was constantly wondering what they were thinking about me at that moment. Maybe they felt as awkward as I did. or perhaps even more so. What bothered me most was overhearing something inappropriate. It might have been an unfortunate accident, but I feared it would change how I saw Adrienne and Sebastian, my two closest companions, and my brothers, my protectors. Although I covered my face, the negative thoughts got louder as I tried to ignore them. So I told myself, this was just an unexpected moment, no? Perhaps I was overthinking things, but I couldn't help but get up. Pacing around my room, trying to shake off the unease, I muttered to myself as if trying to convince myself it wasn't a big deal, but deep down I knew something had to change. Something had to make this feel normal again. And then my heart sank when I heard a knock on my door. I was sure it couldn't. My parents seldom knocked. They needed me, so Jose or Sebastian had to do it. I took a long breath to settle my anxiety before opening the door, and when I did, I found Sebastian there. Squeezing their hands in an attempt to reassure and encourage them to give it a try, they were silent for a while. And after a moment, I could see the conflict in their eyes. Adrienne sighed and said, with a look of helplessness, "Okay, but just this once. And we have to keep it a secret. No one can know." The room became silent. We all just sat there, breathing quietly, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. We began cautiously. Every movement and every action was careful but also full of a strange energy. I'm not sure how much time passed, but it felt like the world around us had vanished, leaving only the three of us. When it was all over, the sun had risen. We didn't say anything as we lay next to each other, breathing, with the light filling the room. The awkwardness I had feared had vanished, and I felt a deeper connection between us, as if we had just gone through something intense together. We went into the kitchen to prepare lunch, and everything felt strangely natural, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But inside I knew that the boundary between us had shifted, and instead of regret, I felt a new bond that brought us closer than before. Adrienne looked at me with a soft smile. "Are you all right?" he inquired softly. I just nodded, returning his smile. "I'm fine, and I think I love you both even more," I replied. The words made me blush, but they held my hand with warmth, their eyes filled with affection. "We love you too," they said, and we continued eating from that day on. Our relationship had subtly but clearly changed. There was no awkwardness. Every moment our eyes met, any unseen space between us disappeared. I could sense a new understanding, an intimacy that had never existed before. Yet deep down I understood what we did was wrong. We had unknowingly crossed a boundary, breaking the boundaries that society and morality had set. I tell myself it was because of the impulsive curiosity of youth. I don't try to justify it, but it was our emotions and curiosity that led us down this path. While I don't regret it, there are moments when I still experience a vague sense of anxiety. We don't talk about it anymore, as if it's an unspoken agreement to leave it in the past. The way Adrienne and Sebastian regard me differently now, as if they are terrified of causing me harm. Every time I meet their gaze, my heart flutters with both excitement and dread. Our curiosity led us down a route we never expected, and our link has grown stronger. I am sure it has also altered permanently. Looking back, I see how my impulsive actions left a mark on our relationship that I can never erase. We crossed a line guided only by our emotions and curiosity, and though no one else knows, I can't escape the truth within myself. Every reflection brings the same realization of how naive I was, and that thought lingers as a constant reminder of what I've come to understand. Curiosity is natural, especially when you're young, but not all curiosity should be acted upon. Boundaries exist to keep us from making mistakes that can leave long-term consequences. Rather than restricting us, boundaries protect life's most valuable things. Sometimes holding back and staying grounded is the best course of action. My story serves as a reminder to pause and reflect before acting on fleeting impulses. While strong emotions may fade over time, their consequences can last. A lifetime of respect, understanding, and a shared sense of responsibility form the basis of real love and enduring connections. Cherish the relationships you have and don't sacrifice them for transitory cravings. The things that are actually important are worth hanging on to.